only mode.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our monthly Strengthening Families Networking webinar. Today we're focusing on preventing child neglect by building protective factors. And let's go ahead to the next slide. Our agenda for today, I'm Kaylin O'Connor. I'll be sharing some updates from the Center for the Study of Social Policy. And then I'll be handing it over to my colleague Martha Reeder at the National Alliance of Children's Trust Funds to share some updates from the Alliance. And then Martha and Kara Georgi from the Alliance are going to be talking about preventing child neglect and sharing some of the great resources that the Alliance has developed recently. So we can scoot on past this slide. A little bit about our webinars in case you haven't participated before. We do these webinars each month. It's an open invitation to anyone who's using the Protective Factors Framework or coordinating Strengthening Families efforts. And that can be for a program, a child care center, a system, a state, a community, anyone who's coordinating this work or who's interested in protective factors and how we can build them. We convene these jointly through my organization, CSSP, and the National Alliance of Children's Trust and Prevention Funds. And each month we have a different topic with often a guest speaker. And all of the recordings and materials from past webinars are posted on a Google site that you can see there. That link will also always be in the follow-up email that comes out so that you can always find that link to go and find today's webinar as well as other ones from the past many years that are all archived there. So as I said, we do this each month, and it's on the second Thursday of the month at this time. On March 14th, we're going to be talking about a new strategic plan for strengthening families. I will say a little bit more about that in a minute, but you can register for that webinar now, or you'll get an announcement about it in your email newsletter that you can register there. You can also always go to cssp.org to find the upcoming webinar and register for it. And then on April 11th, we'll be talking about a new parent engagement and leadership assessment tool and how it relates to strengthening families and the existing program self-assessments. And then I noted the dates here, May 9th and June 13th. Those are the second Thursdays, and as we get closer, we'll share what the topics are and who the speakers will be. You can always let me know if you've got a topic or speaker you want to recommend, or if there's something you'd like to share about your own work. Excuse me. So I want to make sure everybody knows that while we had a little challenge with our website in the last few months of 2018, it is up and running. The Strengthening Families content is back. There are still a few things that are marked coming soon where we're still getting the links fixed. But if there's something you need that you can't find, please just let me know and we'll track it down for you. And but I hope you'll find that almost everything you need is there and arranged in a way that's easy to follow and all of that. We are still working to get strengtheningfamilies.net to redirect to the right place. It should be directing to our main Strengthening Families page, and it's just not right now. So we're working on that. Thanks for everyone who has been patient about that, and I know it's frustrating because we do use that shorter URL in a lot of places. And so I'm relieved that we don't need to change it in all the places that it appears. It is coming back. Moving on, as I mentioned, we're in the just beginning stages of a strategic planning process, starting to envision how CSSP and all of our partners can take Strengthening Families forward as an initiative. We're looking at a 5-year strategic plan and just beginning to draft it now. And I'm excited that by our March 14th webinar, so 4 weeks from today, you'll be able to see what it looks like right now and add your thoughts. Both reacting to what's there and adding things and commenting on sort of how things should be phrased and all of that. So there will be an online feedback tool and a way to review that and look at it. I apologize for my cough there. And on our March 14th webinar, you'll be able to give some feedback in a live conversation and also figure out how to get in and give your feedback online. So I hope a lot of you will engage with us in that process so that the strategic plan will reflect the diverse interests and opportunities that are all around the country for all of us who are interested in making sure that more families have opportunities to build their protective factors in whatever settings we may encounter them. All right, going to the next slide. I wanted to share that our partners are offering a Families Thrive training in Denver coming up at the end of March. This is a curriculum that was modified. There's an original curriculum for Youth Thrive, which is a parallel framework of protective and promotive factors for young people. It's primarily being implemented at this point in intervening systems, so in child welfare, juvenile justice, family court are some of those types of systems, although the framework itself is universal, just like Strengthening Families is. So there was a demand from some people in the field for a training that would touch on both Youth Thrive and Strengthening Families. And so the Families Thrive curriculum was developed, which is Youth Thrive content with Strengthening Families content woven in. So they are offering a training in Denver at the end of March. It's 4 days for practitioners to go through the training. There's an additional day for those who want to be certified as trainers to take that curriculum elsewhere. And you can find out more information at the website there. And I will add that if you go through the training of trainers, you are then certified to train people in Youth Thrive or in Families Thrive. Since CSSP does not certify trainers in Strengthening Families, and our partners at the Alliance do that with a separate curriculum that's all Strengthening Families, it feels a little awkward to say you're not certified to train in Strengthening Families, although you can use materials from the CSSP website on Strengthening Families in particular. However, we still have our partners at the Alliance who are going to share about how strong the building the protective factors, bringing them to life in your work, how well that is thriving around the country. So you're going to hear more about that in a minute as well, but lots of training options. Okay, a couple other pieces of work from CSSP that I wanted to share. If you were at the Families Thrive, oh my gosh, I'm saying all these words in the wrong order. If you were at the Together for Families conference that we held in Cleveland last fall, you heard about the Manifesto for Race Equity and Parent Leadership in Early Childhood Systems. It was not in a designed document format at that point, but it is now available on our website, beautifully designed, ready to share. So this was a manifesto developed by a group of parent leaders from the communities that we call EC Link. That's the Early Childhood Learning and Innovation Network for Communities that are all focused on local early childhood system building. And they've articulated 5 commitments for change that organizations and direct service providers and other agencies should take on in order to build parent leadership and parent engagement and promote race equity at the same time. So those 5 commitments are listed there. The manifesto provides some really nice framing and language about why these 2 issues are so intertwined, and then talks about what you can do in each of those 5 commitments for change. So I encourage you to check that out and let me know if you're interested in diving in on using that in certain ways. We can connect you with the parent leaders group that developed it. And I'd be interested to hear how folks are interested in it as well. Another tool that's coming out of our EC Link work, but that I thought a lot of you might be interested in, is about measuring the performance of early childhood systems. So this is a project where we've been working again with those local leaders in EC Link and talking about not just how do we measure whether children and families are thriving, which is a question that a lot of people have. And we did some work on developing outcomes and indicators. But then with this group, we really wanted to dig in on how do you know that your early childhood system is working well? How do you know that by building a local early childhood system, you're doing better than just having good programs in your community? So we've developed a set of tools related to these 4 what we call contributions of the early childhood system, so that you're improving the reach of early childhood services, you're improving the coordination of those services and across sectors, you're improving the commitment of your community to early childhood issues, and you're improving equity, which includes the focus on parent engagement. So we're really excited to share that work that's been going on for 3 years, and we have a toolkit that will be available on the website at the end of February, and we're doing a webinar February 25th to share that. You can register for the webinar at that link. And then just noting that the parent engagement and leadership assessment tool that I mentioned earlier, that'll be the focus of our Strengthening Families webinar in April, it's also part of this toolkit, but we wanted to give it a little bit more time and get to hear from folks in Boston and the Family Engagement Network who are currently piloting that tool, and they can really share how it intersects with their ongoing Strengthening Families work and how others might be able to use it. And I think I've got one more slide here just to let you know. As you can tell, we have a lot of work going on at CSSP, and I want to make sure that you know you have options to stay connected to all of it. So you can go to anywhere on our website, actually, on cssp.org, and click on Sign Up at the bottom of the page, or go to the link that's on your screen now, and you can sign up for any of these 5 newsletters. They all come out once a month or less, so you're not going to be barraged with inbox overload. But each of them has a different focus, and I'd encourage you to sign up. Most of you are probably already getting the Strengthening Families e-update if you heard about this webinar, but if you heard about it elsewhere and you'd like to get regular notifications as well as hear more about how folks are using Strengthening Families, be sure to sign up for that newsletter. And then the others are focusing on different areas of CSSP's work that you may also be interested in. I think those are all of my updates from CSSP, and I'm going to hand it off to my colleague, Martha Reeder at the National Alliance of Children's Trust Funds.
Thank you, Kaylin. Welcome, everyone. Kaylin and I were talking earlier that February seems to have been a really hectic month, so we really appreciate you spending some time with us this afternoon and hope that we have some great information to share with you. At the Alliance, we have some trainings coming up. Actually, there's one going on right now in Wyoming, but we have training in Madison, Wisconsin in March, and then in San Diego in April, and in Sacramento in May. We keep a waiting list, and if you're interested, we are pretty sure that there will be open registrations at all of these trainings. The Madison training is the only one that has an open registration right now, but we hope to be announcing the others soon. I still have 2 open training slots in Madison, but I probably need to hear from you pretty quickly if you want to register for that training. So do let me know if you want to be on the waiting list, and you will get all the latest information when it's available. This is just a map that shows our trainers across the country, and now after today we will have 1,050 trainers. So our training network is really expanding. Also, we have some new wonderful materials on our website about for Parent Leadership Month. This month in February, we have some fillable certificates you can use to honor the parents that you work with. There are 3 actual certificates that you can choose from, and hope you will go to our website and take a look at those. If you are working with parent partners and you would like to show them some special thanks and recognition for their important work. In the same place, the Alliance Parent Partnership Council is sharing some images this month that connect and connect people to our parent acrostic tool, and we will have a new image every week. So be sure to check there, and I think there are 2 images there for you now, and we will be having those throughout the month of February. So we're anxious for you to share those on social media and in your own networks. So today it's our privilege to share with you some of our work about preventing child neglect. And let me adjust my my panel here so that won't be in your way before we go on. We're going to, sorry. There we go. Our parent leader consultant at the Alliance, Kara Georgia, and she also serves as the co-chair for the Alliance National Parent Partnership Council, is going to be co-sharing with you today about this work, and we will show you how you can find the materials that we'll be sharing with you today. We have a new website, and it's ctfalliance.org. And when you go to the website, there is a menu bar at the top right-hand corner, and when you click on it, this gray box will drop down. The arrows show you the content areas for preventing child neglect and for protective factors, where a lot of the content that we'll be sharing today is accessible. So we're going to be sharing with you about a training called Let's Talk About Preventing Child Neglect, and it's in the Preventing Child Neglect content area, and you can access all of the materials for this training by clicking on training. Right now I'm going to ask Kara to step in and take over. She's going to get us ready for a part of our sharing time a little bit later. Kara, would you like to say hello?
Thank you so much, Martha, and good afternoon, everyone. So one of the things that we wanted to do with today's webinars, we wanted to show you kind of the interactive component that you can utilize whether you're in a webinar situation such as we are today or whether you're in a face-to-face training. And so for those of you who are have a smartphone, I'm going to encourage you to pull it out, go into your messaging app, and prepare to send a new text. And what you're going to do is you're going to type the number 22333, where you would put the contact's phone number, or that person or friend that you would normally be putting in their number. The next step is you'll go down where you'll type a message, and what you're going to do is type in the capital letters TERESARAFAEL 844 in as the message, and you're going to hit send. What that's going to do, it will send you kind of like a confirmation message of, are you sure that you want to do this? And you'll just click, yep, send it. And what we're going to do is ask for you to then type in the message, how are you feeling today? And for some of us, it's not just a simple one word. We can be like totally overwhelmed or feeling fabulous or super excited. And if you're going to do that, what we ask you to do is put quotation marks around the two words. So that way you'll be able to have those words stay together. Or you can put little dashes in between the words, just as you see on the slide. And so in a little bit later on in the presentation, we'll show you the word cloud that gets created by all those words that you're typing in about how you're feeling today. If you need to look back and see how you're feeling and you don't really remember what the directions were, I encourage you to look at the chat box, and the directions are there. And from there, Martha will continue on, and I'll keep watching how everyone's feeling today. I'm already seeing some good feelings.
Thank you, Kara. And we have done the polling device in a live presentation, but this is our first time to try it in a virtual environment. So I think we will just have fun with it today. So basically, we want to think about preventing child neglect and why we teach on neglect. And I think that if you bring this topic up in almost any conversation, you will find that it is the most prevalent form of child maltreatment and has serious and long-term consequences. It's also the least understood and not very clearly defined, and many times you cannot agree upon what the definition is. So where did the information for this training come from? It builds on the Alliance's extensive research and work to elevate this into a national conversation about preventing child neglect. It also ties into our work around the protective factors framework, utilizes research findings reported from the literature, and the research phase of our work began with key informant interviews that are rich with all sorts of information, and a series of work sessions with trust funds from across the country that as they help to create a theory of change based on all of that information. It's very important partnership that we have to help create some of this work. The Alliance began the research phase of this work with funding from the Doris Duke Charitable Foundation, and now we continue a targeted effort to raise the visibility of the prevention of child neglect. And the 4 training sequences we will be sharing about today were created through a partnership with the Children's Bureau and the National Child Abuse and Neglect Technical Assistance and Strategic Dissemination Center, or CANTASD. You can also find these materials on the CANTASD website. Before we get into it in a big way today, I just want to share with you that we have many pieces of information, very good tools on our website, and I'm sharing with you today a resource sheet. It's in the handouts that you got today, and you can also find it on our website. It will tell you all of these tools, the research behind the work, the presentation tools. There's actually PowerPoint presentations that you can adapt and use in your presentations out there in the community, and some beautiful infographics, and then the training. So let's look and talk about the big picture of this training. The tool consists of 4 training sequences designed to be used serially, with each segment building on the content of the previous segment. And each of the 4 learning sequences includes a really great presentation of the topic that incorporates parent voices, and it's available in 2 formats, either in a Prezi or in a video format. We all know the value of informal conversations and their power to elevate a topic and to shift the thinking and attitudes of people in ways that really spark them to action. And this is really a conversation tool. Along with the video is what sparks that conversation, and each section has a toolkit that contains the learning objectives, some guidance for working through the learning sequences in various sizes of groups, a reflection journal, an adult coloring sheet that really can engage people during the training as they doodle on it and color it and reinforce the key messages, and something they can take with them to be reminded of those, and then links to additional resources. So in that discussion toolkit, there are many questions that are crafted to help initiate and fire up the conversations as you are conducting them. And like we said, in many different size groupings, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go along. So each training sequence, the first sequence lays the foundation for things like defining neglect and just some of the basic terminology. And the second sequence looks at some assumptions we might be making and encourages us to look deeper. The third sequence, which we'll be focusing on today, looks at ways to prevent neglect and specifically how protective factors can act as a shield. And the fourth sequence looks at what people can do on all levels of social ecology to help prevent child neglect. And we're talking about manageable steps, and there's actually a manageable steps checklist that's included in this fourth sequence. So for now, I'm going to turn it over to Kara, and she's going to take us into a closer look at the third training sequence.
So in that third training sequence, what some of those objectives are going to be that you'll see on the next slide is we want to start really discussing how neglect can occur and also be prevented at multiple levels. It really looks at each level of the socio-ecological model and seeing how there's different things that can be at play that can impact if a child is going to be neglected. My favorite part is the sequence also dives into how the 6 protective factors will help shield individuals and families from the risk factors of neglect. And then the really powerful part is the personal messages that you're going to hear from the parents who have stories that they're sharing in a conversation with one another, really demonstrating how the protective factors have played a part in their lives and talking about it in a real authentic way. And what we're going to do is ask you to kind of join us on this journey as we dive into the sequence. And so on the next slide, these are some questions that we want you to be thinking about. One is, what stands out to you if you watch the video that we're going to play in just a minute? And then thinking about, did watching that video cause you to experience any emotions or thoughts in regard to the work that you're doing? Or how might you use this video or pieces of it in your work? And so what is going to happen is we're going to queue up the video. I will let you know this is one of the longer videos in the sequence, but there's a lot of really good data in it. There's a lot of really good personal examples of how the parents really related to the information, and it really shows the powerful role that the protective factors can play in families' lives. And so as the video is playing, you can watch the chat box. I'll be putting those questions in, and we encourage you to watch the video and be sharing with us, and we'll have a little discussion after we start the video.
Let's talk.
We're going to skip forward just a little bit in the introduction materials, so we'll optimize our time just a little bit.
Why preventing child neglect is everyone's responsibility. Listen as some parents suggest what might be done as a first step.
I really think that what would be helpful for people like me that have been through so many systems and to look at everyone out there to be able to figure out how to get through the systems is for there to be knowledge about neglect. I don't think that enough people know. I don't think that everybody knows what neglect looks like, or even how to face it, or how to ask for help. And I mean educating the public about things, to talk about the issues, to talk about the things that nobody wants to talk about.
Destigmatize the neglect issues.
As a quick refresher, let's remember the definition of child neglect. Child neglect is a failure to meet children's basic needs, and that failure places children in harm's way. Child neglect is more than a family matter. As an individual, you have a role to play. Families have an important role, just as communities do, and society as a whole. It is everyone's privilege and responsibility to help prevent child neglect. One of the factors to consider in each of these roles is the part culture plays. Culture shapes everything we do. It is woven into how we think, feel, and act. Culture shapes the way we express ourselves. As individuals, in our families, in our relationships, in our communities, and in society. A more effective and holistic solution to preventing child neglect is having each one of us, our families, our communities, and society as a whole, take an active role. That active role happens when we build protective factors as a shield against the risk factors that can contribute to child neglect. Consider the protective factors that are a part of this important shield: parental resilience, social connections, concrete support, social emotional competence of children, knowledge of parenting and child development, and nurturing and attachment. These protective factors are operational in all of the dimensions of our lives. As individuals, most of us have aspirations to develop and maintain good health, self-esteem, coping skills, hobbies and interests, the best aspects of our own personality factors, and good social skills. Protective factors help us build these strengths and may help to protect us from the effects of risk factors in our lives over which we may have little control, such as disability, poor health, premature birth, isolation, temperament, behavioral problems, childhood trauma, and young age. Listen to this parent discussion about the value of promoting positive social and emotional development of children and nurturing and attachment as protective factors.
You know, I can remember for me and other parents that I worked with, sometimes you don't even necessarily realize that you're neglecting your children.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that because they had a roof over their head and food on the table and clothes on their back, that I was being a good mom. I didn't think for a second that my not being there for them and me not actually taking care of them and nurturing them, that I was neglecting them.
I agree with you completely, and I think that that piece of neglecting our children's emotional needs is something that those of us who struggled with substance abuse have to come to terms with, that we, whether we were physically present or not, whether we physically met our children's needs most of the time, I don't think any of us can say we were there emotionally for our kids.
Right.
And we did not meet their emotional needs.
Right.
And that's neglect too.
In our families and relationships, we strive for strong family structure, secure attachment, stability, open communication, good modeling, supportive environments, and positive relationships. Protective factors like parental resilience and knowledge of parenting and child development can help build these strengths in our families and relationships, and may help to protect us from risk factors like domestic violence, addiction, age of parents, isolation, mental illness, history of neglect, family structure, inaccurate expectations of child development, and stressful life events.
What I learned after going through this job system the last time and really engaging and embracing the services, I learned that I was also neglecting my children's developmental needs. I did not know that my children had milestones that they need, so I can definitely see that I neglected my children's needs developmentally. I can see the difference in my older children than my younger child based on what they needed at those stages, and I was not able to give it to them.
We all rely on our communities and neighborhoods that are strong and where we hope to find an empowering connection to the faith or support community of our choice, safety, quality child care, good schools, mentors, access to services such as health care and social services, and transportation. Again, protective factors like social connections and concrete support can help build these strengths in our communities and may help protect us from risk factors over which we have little or no control, such as poverty, lack of safety, isolation, lack of services, apathy, poor educational opportunities, and exposure to environmental toxins. In this video, listen as parents talk about a variety of ways communities can help support families and prevent child neglect.
Parents do want what's best for their children, but a lot of times they need the help to make that happen. And that help should come from the community.
I can give an example of an institution that's sort of like a one-stop shop, right? Where you go in and they actually have nutritional classes there. They have a pantry there. They have, for lack of a better word, it's an assignment shop, not an assignment shop, but where you go and you get clothes if you need clothes. They have a daycare on premises, right? And that's an institution that I would consider would be a place that you could go to that would prevent a neglect situation, right? They're centered in the community. Right. And anyone can walk in there and get what they need. People trust the institution, right? They don't have, there's no stigma tied to them for it, and they know that the community needs it.
And I really believe that the faith-based community has an enormous opportunity through even simple programs. Like I heard about a program where single moms could bring their car like one Saturday a month, and they could actually get the oil changed in their car free of charge. Think about, as a single parent, that $30 that you would have had to have spent, that you could actually do something productive with it. And also to feel a part of the community and to feel like the community had lended a hand to you in a really productive way.
In a society that values children and families, we constantly strive for laws, policies, and funding that is adequate to support families, equitable educational opportunities, acceptance and tolerance, opportunities to help others, and the political will to make a difference. All of the protective factors help build a strong society and may help to protect us from risk factors such as lack of supportive laws, inadequate policies and funding, lack of political will, involvement in the judicial system, lack of concern for others outside our own families and communities, and lack of knowledge and understanding about child neglect. Listen as parents discuss what society might look like if people work together with integrated services in a more holistic way.
I think what would be helpful in communities is the systems to stop operating in silos, especially social services systems need to integrate themselves because we're sharing the same clients and then but we're not sharing the same information. So we're dealing with parents and families in piecemeal. We need to deal with them in a holistic, comprehensive way, and the systems needs to come together and be more collaborative and have a community center for social needs. It is a bigger responsibility of community and society to be strong enough to help families support their children. And for society, I would say the bigger takeaway for you is that you're going to have families that are healthy and stronger, and also children that are healthy and stronger who will contribute to society in a healthy way. And I do believe we are seeing it. We pay now or we pay later. And for me, it is pay now. It is to be committed to families and community, and building families and communities up and making them stronger so that kids in themselves can be raised in their homes, in their communities, and communities will be stronger. Thereby we'll have a stronger society, I believe. If we pay up front, we can do a lot to avoid paying later. And it's very costly when we pay later to communities, to families, and I think society as a whole is very costly.
As individuals, we each have responsibilities to ourselves, our families and relationships, our communities and neighborhoods, and society as a whole. The protective factors are critical in building the strengths that we strive for in each of these areas. Consider which protective factors you currently have in your life. Nurturing and attachment, knowledge of parenting and child development, social emotional competence of children, concrete support, social connections, and parental resilience. How can you use the protective factors? In your life, in your family, in your relationships, in your community, and in society to help prevent child neglect. When we all work together, child neglect is preventable. It is everyone's responsibility to prevent child neglect. Let's talk more about preventing child.
That there is some closing materials and some attributions at the end, but that is the full video that you saw today. So let's look at some of your comments that you shared. I'm going to open up the chat box and see what you were able to share. So if you haven't already shared, can you say something about what stands out to you as you watch the video? Any comments that we have so far? Trish, can you see if there's any comments that have been shared?
This is Kayla.
Martha, this is Kara.
Oh, go ahead, Kara.
I've seen some in the question panel, Martha, so if you click on that area, you'll see there's been some dialogue back and forth with a few participants with some really great comments and connections.
Okay, all right.
The other thing that I will mention for participants, if you're in a place where you don't have a lot of background noise and you could speak, you can raise your hand and we can unmute you if you want to say your comment.
Okay, Missy Berglund says, I train child welfare staff on responding to neglect, and these are great summaries of the approach we take. What a great resource. Thank you, Missy, so much. Vicki Land says the video is a strong case for family resource centers. Good perspective, Vicki. Carmen Contreras says, the single mom's conversation and also the structure of factors. Can we share this with parents or other professionals? Yes, you certainly can, and we hope that you will. All of these materials are downloadable on our website, and along with the discussion toolkit that is in the handouts. And there are the same materials for all 4 training segments. Thank you. Jennifer says that the parent videos were very comfortable, almost a home-like setting. And those are parents from the Birth Parent Advisory Committee that we work with. And they did a lot of preparation for those videos. And there was a very home-like setting and very open conversation. It was actually hard to choose exactly what to share because they shared a lot of really important information. Debbie Peterson says, I appreciate the references to silos and the impactful statements around need for holistic, community-centered approaches. Thank you, Debbie. I'm having some issues with my... Carmen from Vancouver. I don't see the actual comment. Ian Knox says, great to see more supporting information around the protective factors, especially all 6. Would like to have access for our home visitors to view and training. And like I said before, these materials are available to you, and I hope you will visit our website and download them. And contact us if you have any questions about how to use them. But I encourage you to really explore the discussion toolkit and see how it can be used. Kira, let's switch over to you and start with some of the polling questions.
Great, thanks, Martha. And as we're doing that, one thing that I would share too is that as you saw with the video how it was zooming in and out, that's another type of presentation mode that is called Prezi. And so you not only have a typical PowerPoint presentation you could use with your families, but you have that Prezi as well. So again, great resources, and I encourage you, if you have a place where you can share this, use it. Pick what works for you. As you heard for Martha and I, we chose certain pieces that we thought would be appropriate to share with you. And so what we did was we trimmed it down just a little bit. And so now what I want to show you is how everybody was feeling. And so I hope you can see our great word cloud. And what I appreciate about this is in a setting where maybe participants might be a little reserved, you might want to try to break the ice. The Poll Everywhere is a great way where you can kind of hear from a lot of people and get feedback and kind of tease out what are your participants feeling and relating with the content. So we're going to dive into some of those other questions. I encourage you to grab your phone again. And our next poll that I'm going to ask you about is, do you think that most people in your family or neighborhood understand the importance of building protective factors? And for this question, what I'm going to ask you to do, if you say the answer to that is yes, I want you to type in A and hit send. If you think the answer to that is no, that they don't understand, then hit B, and we'll watch this poll for a couple minutes. You'll get to see the interactive piece of Poll Everywhere. It's neat watching it live time of how it goes up and down. It's just, again, another great way to have some interaction. And think about the power of this information. So if we think that this is how people are truly feeling in our communities, that they don't get how important those protective factors are, that means we need to make a shift. And we need to think of how do we partner and how do we get into some of that stuff you were sharing in the comments about not having silos and really making a difference of helping families understand why these protective factors are so important and make it a part of our community language. Now we're going to check out the next question. For this question, it's kind of a multiple choice one. And it says, if a strong community helps to make a strong society, as a parent stated in the video, then what is the most effective way to create a strong community or society? If you think it's A, education about preventing child neglect, type in A and hit send. If you think it's B, education about building protective factors, go ahead and type that in. C, becoming more engaged in your community. Or D, a holistic approach where each one of us, our families, our communities, and society as a whole really takes an active role. And again, this is your opinion. What do you think based on your work? You all are working so hard to help and support families every day. And we need to think about these things and elevate the conversation, and that's what the toolkit really provides us an opportunity to do. Interesting. When you think about this and watching these bars go up and down, I'm struck as I'm sitting here just reading what the choices are. I'm like, A and B is about education. And the bottom two are kind of this more active or engaged concept or ideas. So think about that as you're going through your work of maybe we've done enough education. How do we start putting some wheels to all this great stuff that we've shared in our communities? Let's take a look at another one. For this one, really simple. Do you believe that building protective factors provides a shield against the factors that contribute to child neglect? Do you think A, yes, or B, no? And so that really gets at that idea that was shared in the video of, do you think that having those protective factors there for families, can it really make a difference about children possibly being neglected? And again, a very telling statement when we look at this poll. It says a lot of information to us. It's the power of those protective factors. It's why we know they're so important.
And Kara, I would just say that when you're using, if you decide to use these polling questions, and it's the group that you might choose to use that in would be if you had a big room and you couldn't divide into small groups and have more intimate conversation. It's a good way to engage those people that are in that large room to be part of that conversation. And no answer to that previous question could spark a really interesting conversation.
Absolutely. And then I activated this next one. What do you think is the best way to create a better understanding of how protective factors protect us from risk factors? Is it A, recognizing and acknowledging your own strengths and protective factors? Is it B, mentoring others and helping them to see their own strengths? B, is it supporting programs and activities that help make families strong? Or D, is it participating in community-wide initiatives that raise awareness about protective factors? And as this one is going, I'm going to give you a little tidbit of pull everywhere knowledge. So when we've done this previously, and we've had multiple choice answers with these really long statements, if we have the bar graph set up to the way that it is that you're seeing right now, it allows the entire length of that long statement get seen. If you switch it the other way, it will cut off some of your words, so you can have it show either way, but just a tidbit. If you want to have long responses such as we did in this slide, you'll want the bars to be going side to side instead of up and down. It's been a fun thing for us to learn and kind of trial and error. And think about that, the power of strength, the power of really getting a community together.
And again, this question really can be very different answer for every person, depending on where you're working, what your opportunities are right now. So it's really interesting to see the division of your answers here.
And unfortunately, with us having a limited amount of time as we do today, we can't dive into that. But think about it. If you just asked that question and saw those responses, as Martha said, think of the conversation you could get going in a room. And it's all because it's not somebody raised their hand and shared their thought. It was, wow, look at what our room is saying and what us as a collective together. And how do we address this? Is there anything that we can do differently? And how do we do it differently? And then this last one is, you have a responsibility to help prevent child neglect in your community or neighborhood. And so the reason that we had so many questions is we wanted you to see it can be something very simple from a yes, no, to something very kind of general, or we can get very specific. And you just think about who's in your audience. Those of you who want to use it with parents, what are the questions that you want to ask and know the answers to? Because parents will pick up their phone and they'll type in whatever it is that they have to participate, but what is it you're dying to know? And sometimes, especially with topics like neglect, it can get uncomfortable. And so this is one way to try to break that ice and get a conversation going with everybody. All right. And so what we're going to do is now flip back over to the slideshow. We hope that you enjoyed looking at the polls. Close those out. And And what I encourage you to do as you're thinking about this is thinking about how you might use this with the families you serve. What information might be helpful. Martha, as I'm doing this, I'm going to switch back to you because for some reason my thing is here, maybe.
Okay.
There we go. I got it.
Okay.
Think about how are you going to use this with the family? Because as Martha has shared in the beginning, we have that toolkit. It's literally a great guide. It breaks everything down and tells you how you could use it in different formats, whether it's small group, large group. There's the additional resources such as the reflection guide, which I find so powerful because it lets you keep thinking. And every time that I do this with Martha, I go back to my reflection guide and think more. And more ideas come out. And additionally, it gives you other resources, and there's so many questions that could be asked. And also, one of my favorite things is that adult coloring sheet that really captures some of the key points. And here's an example of what the one looks like for this sequence. And thinking about the fact of how popular this is for some families to do, and how by them sitting there coloring this sheet somewhere, it could spark a conversation and really get a community conversation going about what happens with child neglect. And so I encourage you to check out the resources. Let us know if you have questions or problems as you're accessing them. Here is Martha's and my contact information, and again, the website where you can go and access all this information. Today, we only touched on sequence 3, but I encourage you to check out the first 2 and the final one. One question that I saw pop up was, is this the only video? There's other videos. There's so much great content. I tell you, you'll spend a lot of great time checking everything out. It's so well done and such a powerful tool to use not only with professionals, but also right with families and getting them to be able to use this information to elevate a very important topic.
And Kara, just to clarify that again, in case I didn't make that clear when we first talked about it, each training sequence has a video. And you can choose between using the video format or the Prezi format. You can use either one. The Prezi doesn't have the narration to it, and you can gives you more flexibility if you want to jump around from one piece to the other. The video segments that you saw today are embedded within the Prezi. And I would encourage you that if you're going to use the Prezi, you want to download that and experiment around with it before you try to use it in a group setting. But in addition to the video or the Prezi, each training sequence also has this guide that has many, many questions, and the questions are just sort of a springboard for that conversation. We give you a lot of questions, but you can also use those to help think about your own audience and customize them to what you want to learn. And then each also has the reflection journal and the coloring sheet. So each that same set of information for each 4 of the training sequences.
This is Kaylin. I was going to read one of the questions that was typed in that I don't think you've touched on yet.
Okay.
Missy Berglund asked, I'm curious if you weave ACEs information in anywhere to help explore culture and parenting. So I think there's kind of 2 separate questions. One is about ACEs and then the relationship to culture and parenting.
Each one of the training sequences does specifically address the issue of culture and parenting, and so that is just integral to each one of the segments. We do not call out ACEs specifically, but as you could see in the video today, as you're going through each of the levels of the social ecology and you see all of the risk factors that we pull out, many of those are very related to ACEs and really show that the protective factors are that thing that mediates against those trauma and other things that occur that are related to ACEs. So although it doesn't specifically call out ACEs, I think you could certainly make the case for that, and if that is a big part of your training that you do, especially you can stop the video at any point and insert that into your conversation where it would be appropriate. And I think that would be a great way to use it.
Great, thank you. And I see another question that was typed in. We've got about 5 minutes left, so I'll keep raising these questions.
That's good.
One person just wrote, "Thank you. We look forward to visiting your website and using these resources to supplement our parent education discussions here at our Family Resource Center." So thanks for that, Teresa Burns. And then Michelle Bailey Scott asked, getting more into that culture issue that you just talked about, have you considered training staff to ensure that they take their own cultural biases into consideration when they're assessing whether or not it is cultural differences they're observing, if it's child neglect or if it's a difference in cultural norms, behaviors, values, and beliefs related to the protective factors? So that question of helping staff discern what might look like neglect to them and how to recognize their own cultural biases at times.
I think that the video content in all 4 of these training sequences does touch on that in some very big ways, and I would encourage you to watch all of the videos, and you will see how that that whole idea of culture, and if practitioners are watching this, and you could certainly use this to help your staff have those conversations.
Thank you, Martha. I think that was a good answer. It also answered the next question that was typed in. Munira Fatehi had typed in, "Is there material on cultural competency?" And I think you just covered that. There's also a comment here from Chesley Bond, who wrote, "I'm going to use the information you provided to develop a tip of the month based on child abuse prevention. Thanks so much."
Awesome. What a great idea.
Yeah, so that's great news. If anyone else has a question, go ahead and type it in. I think we've come to the end of what we had planned to present, and I'm so grateful, Martha and Kara, that you, well, first of all, that you developed these materials, which are fantastic, and I know they've been out for a little while. It's great to spend some time sharing them with people, and it's obvious that a lot of people in the audience today could see immediate uses for it, so this is really valuable, and I think it's going to get a lot of use as it gets out there into the world, so thank you for presenting it and for creating it.
Well, thank you, Kaylin. And just for any of you who plan to come to the National Conference on Child Abuse and Neglect in April, Kara and I will be doing a session at that conference using these materials, and we will actually be able to have those longer extended conversations. So in this format, it's a little difficult to do that, but we were able to share it in Cleveland at the Together for Families conference and had some wonderful discussions there, and we're looking forward to doing that again.
All right. Thank you so much. I think we're going to call it an afternoon. Hope everyone has a great rest of your day, and happy Valentine's Day. And we will all talk again soon. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.